In 1845, Clara Schumann published a set of 3 preludes and fugues for piano as her 16th opus. In a previous article, I examined Schumann's handling of canonic imitation within the 3rd fugue of this set, focusing on canons that involved a delayed transposition of the melodic subject. In this video, I examine an instance within this same fugue in which the subject is imitated in inversion. In particular, I explain how, just by looking at the fugue's theme itself, one can discern its potential to serve as the basis for an inverted canon. Though I apply these concepts to this specific fugue subject by Schumann, these techniques for determining canonic potential can be applied to any melody. We begin with a focus on some stretch of the given melody's beginning, since it is to the identities of the subject's head that classical fugal practice remains most faithful. Displacements are undone, and accidentals are removed, leaving a more temporally regular and purely diatonic melody. To discern inversional canonic potential, the first pitch of the theme is labeled as the first pitch in the diatonic scale, and the other pitches are labeled accordingly. When the first pitch is tonic, as is the case here and in many other fugue subjects, these labels match numeric scale degree labels. A time delay is chosen. Here I choose the half note. As with transpositional or recto canons, the next step is to create a representative inventory of ordered intervals, which reveals the melody's canonic potential. But for inverted canons, the intervals in this inventory are not the differences between pitches separated by the delay, but the sums. Therefore, when I label this interval as a +3, it is not because this is an ascending third, but because D and F are first and third in this D-centered diatonic scale, and I am summing their labels as if first and third referred to 2 intervals, in this case 2 intervals stacked atop one another. Unison plus a third make a third. The distinction is easier to see with the next interval. The next interval is identified not as a descending second, but as an ascending fourth, because this is the result of adding a second to a third. Therefore, this approach exploits the fact that in common musical parlance, we use numbers like first, third, and so on to describe both diatonic scale degrees and intervals. For this inventory's third interval, an adjustment is necessary, because the original melody contains a suspension. Standard practice is to resolve a suspended pitch downwards, not upwards. A melody's suspension does not preclude it from achieving a well-formed combination with an inverted form of itself, but it simply requires that the suspended pitch be consonant. Therefore, we restore the suspended form of the melody when determining the interval from this moment to a later moment. Now at this point in forming the inventory to discern potential at a half-note delay, we can stop. How do we know this? Well, for starters, the relationship between the intervals of the inventory and the melody's canonic potential is exactly the same as it was when working with recto canons. With only these 3 intervals, +3, +4, and +7, in the inventory, I can already tell that an inverted canon with a half-note delay will not work for this melody. To see this more transparently, we can progress to the next step, which is to project the intervals in the inventory from the melody's first note, creating what I call the gather. If this gather cannot fit within a 7th chord, then a 2-voice canon will not be well formed at any pitch offset. This same procedure applies for inverted canons. And in this case, this sus2 chord does not fit within any 7th chord. Correspondingly, Schumann does not use an inverted stretto at a half-note delay in her fugue. Let's try a whole-note delay. Once again, we form the inventory of intervals, each interval the sum of the labels for notes separated by the time delay, again adjusting for the suspension. The gather created from this inventory not only fits within a seventh chord, it is a seventh chord, an F7 in particular. We apply the motto in this video's title, fifth above, third below. The fifth of an F7 is C, so if the comus begins on a C above and a whole note later than the dukes, the canon has a good chance of being well formed. Indeed, this combination works well. The only dissonances are treated as passing tones. However, the dukes' clear position in D minor most likely recommends using C sharp to begin the comus. This is exactly what happened with one of Schumann's recto strettos. But unlike this recto stretto, where the C sharp leading tone resolved to tonic within the same voice soon thereafter, the C sharp in the inverted canon is left hanging. But remember, there is another option, fifth above, third below. The third of an F7 is A, so if the comus begins on an A below and a whole note later than the dukes, the canon has a good chance of being well formed. Yet here we can see another way in which the gather, especially as an ordered set of pitches, can refine this chance. Note that the pitch class A, the pitch class provisionally identified as the starting pitch for the comus, immediately repeats within the gather. Whenever this happens, this indicates the presence of parallel octaves, as shown here. If instead the pitch class a perfect fifth away from this provisional first pitch class immediately repeats, then this would indicate the presence of parallel fifths. Even though these pitches, as notated here, are separated by a fourth, their pitch classes are also separated by a perfect fifth. So, both of these options have some flaw. The comus below makes parallel octaves a measure after it begins, and the comus above is likely to start with a hanging leading tone, although it enjoys parallel thirds at the point where the comus below brought on parallel octaves. From this perspective, one could say that Schumann hybridizes these two solutions, taking the best of each and discarding the flaw of each. Schumann saves the fugue's one inverted stretto for the very end. She starts the comus below on A, but then transposes the latter part of the dukes down by third, replacing the parallel octaves with parallel imperfect intervals. Let us listen to the conclusion of her fugue with its inverted and adapted stretto.